Well, hello folks, welcome to another YouTube chat video. I'm just going to turn down the flight simulator just a little bit so I can hear myself speak. But here we are, as the title suggests, we are going to be trying something different today, folks. We are going to be... I'm just going to... I'm just going to set my autopilot here so we can explore. I'm going to speed it up a bit. So folks, we are going to be doing something different today. We are going to be flying along the DMZ today, folks. We'll be exploring the DMZ. We're going to be seeing how much detail there is in the DMZ. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise the altitude, so... how do I do this? Right, I don't know how to set the, I'm going to try and do it because I need to be high when I'm doing this flight, so... Here we go, sweet. So yeah, back to what we're discussing. We're going to be flying along the DMZ today. We're going to see what's there and how much detail it is in. I did this a long time ago when Flight Simulator first came out. One of the very first things I did, apart from visiting my house like everyone else did, I'm very passionate, I'm very, very interested in the DMZ and the history of North and South Korea. Something I don't know, I think it stems from the fact that our country, New Zealand, all the way, Aotearoa New Zealand, all the way down here, we don't have a border as such. Basically our border is our international waters. We do have one of the largest airspaces in the world. This is all New Zealand's airspace that we look after and monitor. We also have one of the largest exclusive economic zones in the world, so we protect all of this area, and also we have territorial claims to Antarctica. Apart from that, I mean, our air border is with Australia, the Pacific Islands here, Tahiti, which is French owned, and Chile. So apart from that, we don't have any borders at all, so I'm always fascinated with borders, and this one in particular is a very, very interesting, quite a sad, surreal history regarding how this whole country has been basically separated and pulled apart, which is very sad. We're very, very respectful of that, so apologies to anyone who's, especially Korean, who'll be offended, but this is just for this video is purely for, you know, just filling that, what's the word I'm looking for, filling that interest, you know, like I've been fascinated with the history, and definitely the DMZ, like we have nothing like that in New Zealand, which is for a good reason, for it is a good thing, I should say. But yeah, we're going to do a tour along the DMZ. This is very interesting. So when you're on Google Maps, starting from sort of here, I think all of this coastline has got like a barbed wire fence running all along it. I'd love to know the exact meaning is behind it, whether it's just to stop things from that North Korea sends across being washed up on the shore, or if it's to stop. It's even got an early warning radar heliport there, like that's quite, I don't know what to say about that. Interesting. Lots of different little helicopter pads. But yeah, now we're getting in towards the real nitty-gritty, we really are coming in. So I'd like to know if it's more to stop North Korea from sending various different things, or what the story is. But yeah, along here, I think they're starting to open it up a bit more now, but definitely from here onwards, access to anywhere near the beach is pretty much prohibited. Going off Google Maps, of course, like it looks like people can swim along here, but there is a fence running along here. But yeah, this is a very fascinating part of the world. You can see these roads going through the mountains here. I do believe that these roads might have dynamite to blow up just in case North Korea comes and invades South Korea. But yeah, it's very fascinating. It's one of the most active zones in the world. As we're coming up to, it feels quite weird doing this actually. In real life I'd be shot down by now, I think, and that's probably from the South Korean Air Force. But here, as you can see, that's marked along here. That is the DMZ, folks. That's the South Korean side of the DMZ. There's a fence that basically, triple barbed wire fence that basically runs the full width of the country. This is a place I really like to go to. I think there's an observation place over here, and this is basically, I've been looking at Google Maps, that's a fence there that connects up to the beach there. This is basically no man's land now. This would be a really cool place to go, because you can get a nice view all the way up the coastline, basically to where the border starts. So here we are flying over the DMZ. This is the Demilitarized Zone. So between here and the North Korean fence is the DMZ. It's really fascinating flying over this with this detailed graphics. So I did this in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and when I did do it, I'm sure it was like this, and then lo and behold, like literally a few build updates later, all of this became, I'm pretty sure it became more generic texturing, so they got rid of all of this high detail texturing, and I'm sure around here was, this area here was all covered over with your generic texturing, just to, I'm not too sure whether it's security, to be honest. I feel like someone like North Korea would have access to a lot more high detailed stuff than this, so I don't understand the full logic behind that, but I guess it's national security at stake anyway. But looks like it's all in good detail here. So here we have the DMZ running along here. That's the South Korean side of the DMZ. You can see these little military outposts. We'll get the helicopter and we'll get closer to it. And then on this side, this is really good too with Navigraphs. It shows you the exact border, whereas Google Maps, they don't show you the exact border. Right, I'm going to level out there. We are now flying over North Korean territory, folks. Just getting back onto our path. What I might do is I'm going to change the weather to clear visibility so I can see a lot more. So here we have it, folks, flying basically between the two countries here. You can clearly see the South Korean side of the military, the DMZ along here. That must be the North Korean part. The other one here. We'll try and find the North Korean side of the fence, We're in a pretty perfectly designed aircraft for this. This is basically that sounds a lot better. But this is sort of a scout police plane with really good visibility, so we can get a clear view of everything. Just trying to find. I don't know if we have a clockers on this, because here it is here. Just gives me an idea on, because I'm using the sim rate to speed up this simulation. So here we are, flying basically down the middle of the DMZ. We've got the South Korean side here, which is shown with this bare strip of land, and dotted around you've got these little lookout posts. I think there's a few. That's probably one down there. So you've got the main fence, and then coming off the fence you've got these little roads that sneak down to key observation viewpoints. And where are we? Right, we're getting a bit far of course, so we'll just scoot along the, so basically on the South Korean side of the DMZ here. Really good detail, by the way. I'm really happy with this. Yeah, this whole area is a really interesting place. This is basically no man's land except for scouts that patrol the actual DMZ, making sure everyone's respecting the laws. And this is the that looks like the North Korean side of the DMZ. South Korean side is more for keeping North Koreans out. Unfortunately, the North Korean side is more about keeping North Koreans in more than anything. Now we're definitely flying over North Korean airspace now, so this must be the North Korean fence that runs along the limit of the DMZ. Here we have the very infamous punch bowl. It's a really interesting. It must definitely be an extinct volcano sitting in a caldera like that. That's as close as, like, basically with the Peace Village, that's probably the closest civilization that's right on the border there. You can see the DMZs running right along here. It looks like lots of little greenhouses and whatnot. Quite a few battles were fought through here, lots of lives were lost. Same with this DMZ area. It must be quite sort of sad to think that there's lots of like bodies and remains and stuff that will never be sent back to their loved ones unless the country unites. But yeah, I can't find any more traces of the DMZ. It's sort of lost in this, lost here. Right, I'm just gonna scroll on across. But yeah, fascinating place for many different reasons, obvious reasons. I think that looks like it might be generic texturing there actually. So there's still parts that are, dare I say, sort of covered over. I mean, like it's for security and whatnot, but I get that feeling too, like if they really wanted to, like there's lots of access to data, like you've got Google Maps that shows this all in clear detail. But yeah, well, there's a little outpost there, so there's the DMZ. Still, you can sort of see remnants through the forest there of the South Korean side of the DMZ. We'll try and see if we can find that must be the North Korean side there. That looks like a clearing where they've obviously built the fence along here. Yeah, it's really interesting landscape around here. Like I say, a lot of this landscape is out of bounds to your normal everyday human being. I'm just going to go into satellite imagery just to see if we can see a bit more. Yeah, it's a really interesting part of the world, isn't it? Flying the DMZ, I mean, it's got lots of history behind it, lots of sad history. But also too, for someone who's fascinated with borders, such as myself, from a country that we don't have any borders or don't have any, you know, this is a very interesting part of the world for those reasons. For a place that's so highly secured off this the fence that they have, the DMZ, it's triple wide fence, it's got like mesh on both sides, and it's got a very high powerful voltage running through the middle, I do believe. Same with the North Korean side too, it's very similar. You can sort of just make out this is probably why we're not seeing much of it, because of the excessive amount of trees. But you can see these would be little watchtowers here dotted all along. You can see little tracks that sneak off the actual DMZ itself, little isolated watchtowers here, but that would be such a isolated feeling knowing that it's just that road there. It's quite easy for your enemies to come right round and circle you off, and I'm sure there's been lots of instances of various scuttles along the border here, because basically this is all no man's land. Once you're beyond that fence there, you're in pretty much your fair game to the enemy, basically. and both sides they do patrol through here, lots of landmines I can imagine through here. This would be an awesome, if these two countries ever unite, this would be an awesome place to keep as a wildlife refuge. I can imagine this would be a perfect spot to like reintroduce like tigers that were once found all through this area. Sort of struggling to find any more, so we're now flying over the demarcation line, the DML, cutting across into North Korea. Can't really see any signs of their fence along here. Like I say, I think it's because the trees are quite heavily implemented in this game. You can definitely see that's definitely coming into that's part of the DMZ along here. It's quite interesting like how they've got it all marked out, like the artillery helicopter base airport there just shows you like this is a demilitarized zone, but just on that side and just on this side of the fence it is just basically every man in this dog all lined up. I can imagine North Korea would have lots of artillery pieces all hidden in the mountains here, like close with South Korea. I do know there's a massive Air Force base just over there. You're definitely getting into really good resolution around here. As we can see, that's definitely the North Korean DMZ running along there, and then just below us here we've got a really good view of the South Korean, the DMZ running along here as well. We will just carry on following this path along. It's interesting how they've got the fields right up against the DMZ there. We've got a satellite. What can we see in our satellite? So yeah, this is sort of no man's land right here. And then must yeah, that's the North Korean line running along there. I think this might be part of North Korea as well, but I don't think it is. That's definitely the North Korean DMZ northern limit there. Right, I might just drop the altitude a bit so we're close to the ground. Yep, that's the definitely are flying over North Korea. Well, we are in North Korean territory, and this does appear to be part of the North Korean demilitarized fence that is more there to keep their population in than I think that's the reality is. These guys, South Korea is more like, it's more a case of defending their country from the invaders, whereas the North Korean side is more about preventing their people from escaping and some severe life up there and escaping to a really nice, well, it would definitely be considered paradise jumping this fence here, although there are stories of North Koreans that do escape, they just don't adapt to the society here, which is very understandable too, with two different cultures that have been separated for such a long time now. Well, we're almost looking at 50, 70 years of separation, so I'm guessing that a lot of the people that had memories of North Korea and South Korea pretty much the dying race now, so it's now the next generation that probably doesn't have that same sort of connection between the two. I mean, they still got grandparents and whatnot. This is interesting. Is that a helicopter pad or? Oh no, that's another example of. So yeah, this is South Korean part of the DML, the Demilitarized limit, and that would be the DMZ there. You can almost see the triple wire fence, and then that's a road coming up to this little military outpost here, and North Korea would have a similar one as well. Yeah, it's very interesting. Definitely lost it, and I think there might have been more of that excessive amount of trees that's sort of plaguing Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 a bit for so far. We might just. It'd be interesting to see if the aircraft will just level off at the altitude that I've set it at. This is quite a cool little plane actually. It's really good for sightseeing. Yeah, it is too, so that's perfect. Just put the throttle on a bit. And you can see more, these are definitely South Korean outposts over here. But basically I like little castles, aren't they? Little castles surrounded by a moat. In this case it's triple, quadruple barbed wire fences, accessed by the snaking path, which I can imagine would be very, what's the word? Very isolating I can imagine. More so for the South Koreans, because I do know that North Korean soldiers, they do try and capture South Koreans and then drag them across the border and parade them as defectors trying to escape for a better life, whereas the other way, I don't think any South Koreans would come over here and try and capture North Koreans. That definitely is the North Korean side of the DMZ, their buffer zone snaking its way along the mountains, and then over here you've got the South Korean side snaking along as well, with all these little outposts that are dotted along, just keeping an eye on everything. And I believe that South Korean side, this whole area has just got big, massive spotlights that just light up the whole area, just to make sure nothing gets through that shouldn't get through. And right down the middle here, there's is it it's the demarcation line. I think that's the demarcation line. I'll just go Google that. yeah, the military demarcation line is right down the middle here, which has got little yellow markers down the middle here. That's very much on the border, is that? That's the South Korean military outpost, isn't it? And I think we're pretty much on over North Korean territory, so that must be right on the boundary there. But yeah, through the middle here, there's nothing apart from a little yellow line that's dotted every so often along the border. That just tells you which side you're on. But apart from that, it's just open territory. That's the yeah, that's the must be the middle. That's the DMZ. That's the North Korean side, and the South Korean side. That's very far from the their limit of the DMZ. And it's interesting how these rivers are all dammed off, so to stop people from sneaking in through here. Once you get through here, like all of these, I've looked on Google Maps and it looks like these are all dammed, or they have wire running through the middle just to stop people from trying to swim under, then swimming through. And on this side, it's just to stop potential soldiers from swimming down here and then getting into the South Korean side of the territory. It's more prevalent around this part of the country. In this game anyway, you can really clearly see the DMZ on both sides. I think, as I mentioned before, I think that part of the DMZ from the punch bowl between here, I think that might be more generic texturing, I think. That looks pretty good though, but not quite as clear as this. It really stands out now, flying between the two countries. Yeah, unfortunately Google Maps isn't really accurate. I think they're trying to avoid showing exactly where the lines are. But here it's shown really well. Yeah, it's just fascinating. It would be, if you're invisible or like Quake God mode, it'll be cool to explore through here and just, it'd be cool to be the fly on the wall and just see what's happening in amongst here, see what people are lurking around, where the landmines are. Up in the mountains here, it'll be interesting to see where all the artillery that's apparently all pointed at Seoul is all hidden. Same with North and South Korea too. I imagine there's lots of military installations all dotted amongst these mountains here. I will do another DMZ flight. I might do this again, and I'll definitely do a few helicopter trips through here, maybe land in one of these places and go for a walk across to the other side. Things you can do in this game, which is great, which you can't do in real life. And through this game here, this is where you're free to do whatever you want, which I do like about Flight Simulator. You can fly between these two countries, you can explore like we are doing, explore the DMZ like we are doing. We'll get back on track so we can follow the stay right between the middle of the two countries. Yeah, I just like this freedom to be able to do this. This is the beauty of Flight Simulator. You can go to all these places that are strictly off limits. You can really see the triple wire DMZ fence that runs along through there quite clearly. And these are really right out there on the right out there in regards to being on the border there. And now I'm just going to slow the game down. I just want to see where that clock is. Right, we are getting close to the joint security area, the famous JSA, which is just up here. We will do a separate tour to the JSA and we'll go in a bit more detail. But this is the famous area where the two countries meet face to face. We must be, the actual border must run up through here. That's one of the very first like major South Korean outposts. It comes along here and then it cuts right down the middle of these two countries and then it comes right around here, and just below us here is the closest, the only real major town in the actual DMZ itself. Daesongdong, I can't pronounce the name, so apologies for pronouncing the name wrong, and that's basically the actual border runs right through here, and these farms are right on the edge here. We'll go into more in detail about this fascinating town on the DMZ. And we will hook now right, hard, left. And just in the, towards the south there, that is Seoul. That just shows you how close Seoul is to the DMZ. Basically stone's throw away from the DMZ, well, from North Korea. We're now flying over North Korean territory here. Now we're getting back into the DMZ zone itself, and yeah, we'll carry on along this coast here. So basically this is the Han River, or the Han Estuary. This is basically a neutral zone through here. No fishing is allowed between these two countries. But you can see we're now flying over North Korea. You can see how close it gets to South Korea in regards to this being sort of Seoul, and this is the DMZ that's keeping the people safe. You can see it's right up close now. You're basically stone's throw between the two countries. And that's probably the closest point you can get as a civilian right up to this fence here. You can actually basically almost touch North Korean. Same with up here. This is another place you're very close to the actual two countries. And just in the distance there is the mega city that is Seoul. And I don't think in real life there's a bridge there. I think that's a bit of an error on Google Maps, on Bing Maps, but you can see that's the fence over here running along. Basically this whole coastline along here is protected by this barbed wire fence. I'm just going to speed up the game just a little bit. Yeah, there's definitely not a little land bridge like that between the two. One day in the near future, hopefully, that this will be all highways cutting across here. One day when the two countries unite, hopefully that does happen in our lifetime. But I also do hope that this area remains sort of untouched and that conservation side of things, keep this sort of, clear of human development. And right here too, this is another really, I'll do another little tour of my own little DMZ tour that I did, my partner and I, we did ourselves without a guide. And we'll come to this place here, and this is a really, if you are fascinated with the Korean history, and particularly if you're like myself, fascinated with seeing North Korea, this is probably the best place to come to see North Korea, and you can get a glimpse into North Korea itself, much better than the JSA tour that I did for many different reasons, but we'll go in depth about that later on. And this is another place that's off the beaten track too, which we'll also discuss too, but these islands are all part of South Korea, and you can all access them. They all have transport, you can drive across here, so these islands really are fascinating for this whole area. These islands are basically outposts. As you can see, if anything goes wrong, these islands will probably be the first that gets the bombardment as well. You can just see every bit of land in all of these Southeast Asian countries. No, this is not really Southeast Asia, but all of these Asian countries, all of this land is just heavily utilised, which is awesome. All rice paddies and growing chilies and fresh produce. And we'll jut out towards, I think we're on path to go to that island in front of us here. Actually, I'll just scoot around a bit more. But yeah, all of these islands are basically your little outposts, which I believe you can get to. These islands are all connected by ferries, so something about being here, like you really are. That looks interesting too, all of this land use. But out here you definitely are like right on the edge of the world as you know it. And we'll head towards this island over here. We really are going warp speed now. not as dramatic, these islands, but once again these are part of South Korea, and I mean you're quite far away from the actual North Korean coastline, but you are also very much isolated out here too. And I believe this is the island that was attacked by North Korea a few years ago. North Korean, lots of military artillery all facing these islands here, and I believe these islands got bombarded. It's either these islands or the islands further around. But yeah, this island you can get to by ferry, and I think they are trying to bring tourism to these islands, trying to bring a bit more money into the area and try and promote it as a safe place to go to, because you are right on the edge there. And B, I think they're trying to promote that sort of adventure tourism, that feeling that you're basically on the edge of the world. I mean, you are on the edge of the world in regards to the country that's quite hostile over here. Well, not the people themselves, but the regime that is managing the island is very hostile and very open about various different things. And yeah, I can imagine being out here, you do feel like you are far from the mainland, you are far from help should anything happen, and I can imagine things can turn ugly very, very quickly. Alright, we're going to speed this up, super speed now. And we're just going to cut across the North Korean territory here to get to these islands, which are also, these are the furthest north islands of South Korea, the furthest north bit of land in Korea. No, I think that's still the furthest north, but these islands are the most isolated islands of Korea, of South Korea. I'm just going to see if I can reset my clock. Right, we'll get out and enjoy some of this North Korean countryside. You can sort of make out a little fence along there. I do believe North Korea has an electric fence that runs around pretty much the entire country, and only certain people are allowed to access the beach. Right, we're going to now set up bearings to these islands out here, and that will conclude our, I mean, technically these islands are, this is kind of like a DMZ kind of thing, and these islands are surrounded by a barbed wire fence. Imagine living on that island there. You must feel, I don't know, you must feel like you're part of North Korea, but you're sort of part of your own little island there. And here we are, folks. We have now arrived to the most isolated island group of South Korea. I'm just going to disconnect the autopilot and take control for myself, and yeah, flying over this island group here, which marks basically the end of South Korea's territory on the west coast here. Once again, all of these islands are pretty heavily secured with fences all around here. I believe there's lots of artillery on these islands, and I think it might be these islands that were shelled by the North Koreans. That's the north part of North Korea there, that territory, and I believe they have a lot of artillery in the hills there, and I believe they shelled the hell out of this island. Yeah, and here we are, we've made it at the end of our little DMZ tour. This is not part of the DMZ as such, but it's a nice way to end this little flight along the entire South Korean territory, and this is where it ends, and we'll do a little circumnavigation around this island. As you can see on that little point there, those will be little military outposts, little artillery there, just watching. I'll get right down and close, and we will find a spot to land. But yeah, we will do a little circumnavigation of this most isolated point of Korea. Like I say, you really do feel like you're in no man's land out here. What we'll do is actually I believe that's where the shelling took place from that direction, and I'm just trying to find a place to land. We'll land back at that beach there, but we might not do the full circumnavigation of this island, we'll just plod along here for a little bit. We'll land on this little beach here, eh? No, actually we'll go back to where we were before. We'll go check out that little antenna back there, and we'll land on a long beach. I'll get rid of that, we don't need that anymore. You can sort of just make out that would be a border fence running along there. Perfect livery for this, for what we're doing, a little scout livery aircraft. I guess we are, in a way, being scouts, just scouting along the border there. And we'll touch down on this beach just in front of us, and we'll walk up that little tenor on that little point there. And that will conclude our little DMZ tour. Something different. I hope you guys enjoyed this little tour. I'll come back and do some more. Still getting used to my voice and talking and whatnot. I had all of these ideas on what to talk about, but I get a bit of stage fright, but we'll come back and maybe do the DMZ again. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little trip, and I'll definitely do a little tour of the JSA area in the helicopter and show you that place that I mentioned that has a really good place if you want to really see North Korea and get a little insight into life over the border. Alright, we'll come into land here. Oh, not quite. Right, we'll do a little... I'm just going to change my joystick. Actually, I'll just use my mouse. Quite good detail in the sand, isn't it? I really do enjoy this game. It's like we're North Koreans. We've just come across the border here and we're just scouting out the territory to launch our attack. Hopefully this video hasn't offended anyone, but as I say, this is coming from someone who's fascinated with this sort of this history, and coming from a country where we don't have any borders, so yeah. Looks like a little shop here if you want to get some groceries while we're here. Or is it a hidden little military outpost there? That's quite cool following these roads, isn't it? Walking along these paths. This probably is a border fence, I could imagine, in real life. Thought I heard a car or something there. Alright, we'll wander on up here. Hopefully we're going the right way to that. Right, we've made it to the top of this little hill where we saw this little radio antenna. We'll see what sort of view we get from up here, eh? All they need to do now is implement the ability to be able to climb up ladders, eh? That would really make this game... Nope, can't climb up that ladder. But here we are at the top of this mountain here after our little flight along the DMZ. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll do it again with a bit more better talking and whatnot, but here we are looking over to North Korea there on one of the most isolated islands, or one of the most isolated part of South Korea here, this island that's basically on the edge of, well, many different things. But yeah, that will end our video, folks, and thank you for being a part of that as we look out over to North Korea there, and we will see you again in the next video.